Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second session in the series, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives and Trafficking Prevention, a Survivor Story. And we are doing this in combination with the Minnesota Indians Women's Sexual Assault Coalition. And with that, we're going to get started. So just a quick disclaimer. The National American Indian and Alaska Native Childhood Trauma Treatment Service and Adaptation Center is supported by a grant from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And the content of this event is the creation of the presenters, and the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the NCTSA. Please take a moment to read our land acknowledgement developed by some of our colleagues. I'm going to give everyone a minute or so just before we get started. With that, I'm going to go into the next slide. Just to follow up for all of you, today's event will be recorded, as you can see by the recording at the top of the line. We will also be sharing, we'll be sharing the recording. I was going to say the presentation and the recording, but we don't have a presentation this time. And any resources and links that are shared in the chat will be sent out. And then at the very end, in the last 20 minutes, you should get a link to our evaluation survey, and it'll either be sent by myself or Eleanor. So you'll get the notification in the chat messages. Before the session begins, this presentation and discussion may evoke some strong feelings related to one's past traumas. And we just want to establish that this is a safe space, and feel free to express yourself in a respectful way, whether it be turning off your camera and taking a moment to just listen, or expressing and sharing your experience in the chat. Another reminder that you are not alone. If you're in immediate crisis or danger, you can use the Strong Hearts Native Helpline, as well as use the National Human Trafficking Hotline with the Polaris Project. And that can be call or text. And this slide will also be repeated at the end. So if you need to see this information or want it shared in the chat, we can send it. So before we all get started, please take a moment to center yourself for today's session. Feel free to center yourself through prayer, medicine, or the breathing exercise on the screen, where you can just take your mouse and follow starting on the purple line on the bottom left corner and going to the stop for the next minute. And then we'll get started with introductions and then presentation. All right. I apologize. I have all of my timers and timing covered on my screen accidentally somehow. So if that was not a full minute, I apologize for cutting anyone off. But with that, I'm going to get started into our introductions. You've been hearing me speak, but my name is Liz Sadoff. I am the program coordinator for the National American Indian and Alaska Native Childhood Trauma TSA. I'm a recent graduate of the Masters of Public Health and Community and Behavioral Health program. And I also am a certified health education specialist. And then I will hand it off to Eleanor.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Eleanor Witt. I'm in my second year of my master's program at the University of Iowa in the school counseling program. I have a bachelor's degree in vocal music education with a minor in Spanish. I work with Liz here on the trauma grant, and I have loved the work I've gotten to do with our colleagues, Rebecca and Shayla, and our speaker today, Jessica. They are awesome, and you are all in for a great session. So thanks for being here. I will pass it to Rebecca.
Hello. I know I hate looking at my bio. It's just so long and weird, right? So hi, everyone. I am Rebecca Baylog. I'm really happy to be here again for another time. Shayla and I have been here before, for those that were here on the first one. I am Oglala Lakota. From South Dakota. My family is a descent, and also Mohawk from the East Coast, from Pennsylvania up to New York, right? My other family, I'm a hybrid love story. My father's a full-blooded Hungarian Slovak Gypsy, which is why I have the last name Baylog. I'm just excited to be here to support all the education and the work that you're doing. I'm doing the clicky things. Excuse me for a minute. Okay. And yeah, so the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition, we serve all the tribes in Minnesota through our programming, but we also are national technical, I say TA, people don't know, and technical assistance and training. And technical assistance means we problem solve with tribes around all the I'm doing the clicky things. Here we go. Okay. Intersecting with sexual violence and sex trafficking, which means domestic violence, murdered and missing, substance abuse, suicide, all the things that intersect with each other in violence, right? So even though we are a state coalition, we're also a national TA provider. And that means we're serving universities, tribes, law enforcement, prosecutors. So I'm really happy to do this work. It's a part of my identity. I'm a mother and I'm an advocate. What else? Today I'm going to pass it to Shayla in a minute to do an intro, but I cannot express to you, Jessica, who is our speaker today, is one of my favorite humans on earth. She's one of the best speakers I have ever met. She's going to share a lot of information with you. And with that, take care of yourselves, be uplifted by what she's about to say. And that's all I'm going to say. For now, I'll do a closing prayer later, so we all leave in a very healthy and feel good way too. So with that, I'm just going to pass it to Shayla because she's kind of a boss lady too. That's it. Peace.
Thank you, Rebecca. Don't say Nisi Goswin. My name is Shayla Beaumont. I work with MIWSAC as well. I'm the Elevate Uplift Coordinator. I also serve on the board of the Missoula YWCA and the Missoula Human Trafficking Task Force. I'm an enrolled member of the Chippewa Cree tribe here in Rocky Boy, Montana, but I'm also affiliated with Gros Ventre, Assiniboine, and Crow tribes. I've been working in the movement for 7+ years, working as a domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking advocate. I've also worked for child protection services and in the education, the tribal education system as well. But yeah, just thank you for being with us today. Excited to present with you all.
I feel like Jessica has already gotten a wonderful brief introduction by her peers, but I'm thrilled to have Jessica come speak with us today and just continue to teach us and help me continue learning. And I think she'll be a great learning opportunity for everybody else here as well. So with that, Jessica, I'm so happy to have you here and I look forward to hearing your introduction.
Bonjour, Jessica Giriga Kuhn-Smith, Indigenous. Hello, my name is Jessica Giriga Kuhn-Smith. I am an enrolled member of the Boys Fort Band of Minnesota Chippewa Tribe. I am a Two-Spirit survivor leader. I am a legal advocate, and I am also currently the MMIR organizer for MN 350. I also have my own research and consulting business that I do. I am a master's student currently, and I'm just finishing, well, I have 1 semester left until I'm complete with my master's, and I'm studying tribal governance and administration. I have a bachelor's in legal studies and a AAAS in law enforcement. A lot of the work that I do now is kind of contrary to that. So I'm really trying to work to hold systems accountable for a lot of the violence and a lot of the issues that we have to go through as Indigenous people. Much of that is really rooted within systemic oppression. So I really center my research and the work that I do around that, and also around my own personal experiences and working directly with families who are impacted by missing and murdered Indigenous people and families who have children within the foster care system and children who are troubled and trying to get back on a good path. I work with different parents and try to advocate for them in the school systems, because I've in the last year had just a few different people reach out to me for help in that aspect, because their children weren't doing well in school and they needed cultural guidance. So I also identify as a cultural advocate as well, just because all of the work that I do is always culturally grounded, and especially the research that I do, it's very decolonized. It's not the type of research that you'll see in journals. All of my research is strictly, most strictly from survivors and families and people who have their boots on the ground that are actively combating these issues in our communities, versus somebody who doesn't have our lived experience. I always feel that lived experience is, most crucial to get out when it comes to research, and there's such a lack of it. And that is why I have really, really focused my education in the last 3.5 years on research. I'm currently finishing up my 3rd part in a extensive research series that's titled The Survivor's View on Missing and Murdered Indigenous People. And I'm trying to wrap things up with it. This third portion of it is the correlation between the foster care system and Indian child welfare. So it's been a very difficult topic because it directly links residential schools to the modern day foster care system, to missing and murdered Indigenous people. And I have interviews with a residential school survivor, and as well as survivors of the foster care system, and people who work with sexually exploited children in the foster care system. That is not out yet, but I will I'll have somebody send the link to my website, because that should be coming out if I keep myself on track by January 1st, I'm hoping. But that all depends. I'm trying to take some time to give myself self-care. It's been a really difficult year in my advocacy. So, but we can talk a little bit about that. Yeah, that's my introduction. And do I just continue to keep speaking, or is there something else that's...
Absolutely. You can
Okay.
feel free to just start speaking, and we look forward to sharing the link with us, and we can send it out to all of the attendees on this call as well.
Okay. I'm just lighting my smudge really quick. Okay, so I didn't get a chance to completely watch the last series that Rebecca and Shayla had done, but I have done work with MUSAC, and I know that they'd give incredible presentations, and I love to be in space with them. So I'm grateful to be here today. I'm grateful for everybody who is here. I just want to say, to begin with, if anybody has questions, that you're more than welcome to put them in the chat. You can try to raise your hand if I see it. Otherwise, feel free to unmute and interrupt me. It's not rude to me. I don't mind if you interrupt me. But yeah, so I started out, I kind of went back to school in 2019, and from there I started building relationships with people across the country. And what had brought me into speaking and trainings and all the things that I'm doing today is that when I first did my first independent study, I was researching and reading missing and murdered Indigenous people and correlations and all of that. And I really quickly came to realize that much of what was correlations with missing and murdered are things that I had personally gone through. And at that time, it was when I first really started coming to terms with the fact that I was a trafficking survivor, because that was an aspect of my life that I kept buried for a really long time. I used alcohol, and I tried to, just keep those types of traumas and pains and things that happened to me buried, because I didn't know how to deal with it. And that's another reason why that I do the work that I do, and I do the research that I do, so that people have access to materials that are survivor voice centered, which is extremely important. And not many survivors are willing to talk about their experiences. It's really difficult. Every single time it's difficult. I have anxiety every time, no matter how many times I've done this. But for me, it's important because to be able to hear different aspects of trafficking, because it doesn't look the same for everyone. And that's what we were talking about when Liz and Eleanor had asked me to speak. They had told me that, Iowa has a trafficking, and it's a lot of truckers. So there's that, so many different ways that people come into trafficking, and it looks different for each individual. I have met so many different amazing, powerful survivors who I've worked with in the past 3 years, that all of our stories are completely different. The ways that we cope, and the ways that we heal, and the ways that we continue to help our people as well as heal ourselves are all different. But one thing that is the same is a common understanding that our people need us. Our people need us to be able to our youth, our future generations need us, and all of that takes to be able to talk about these things comes from our ancestors. And it's kind of hard for me recently, because the first time I was sexually assaulted when I was 14 years old, I went to my medicine man, and for healing, cultural healing, that was my first experience with going to somebody for advice and how to use culture to heal myself as a young girl. And they gave me teachings, and those were teachings that I continued to use throughout my life because I continued to get victimized and never get victimized time after time after. For so long, I had always thought that, you know, it was all the blame should be on other people, and that everything, you know, you should have never did that to me. But now that I'm growing and I'm learning and I'm speaking more about it, I come to know and realize my own part in my suffering and how I kept myself down for so long, when all it took for me to get back up and start rising was for me to put my heart and spirits into it, which I did in 2018 when I decided to go enroll back into school. So for 10 years plus, I kept myself buried in grief, buried in this unexplainable pain that I did not know how to heal. So when I went to my medicine man for these cultural teachings, those were teachings that I continue to use, and I still continue to use to this day. But speaking about it now, it's harder on me, which is why you'll probably see me smudging a lot, because my spiritual advisor passed away recently. And so I'm still trying to cope with that and try to figure out what it looks like for me in my own cultural, you know, practices and healings and teachings, and how to carry those teachings on. But also at the same time, I feel that he is still very much with me, and still very much, you know, watching over me and protecting me. So I just always now, in any type of speaking engagement that I'm doing, would acknowledge and respect him and thank him for getting me to where I am today, because without him, I would not be alive. I would have been probably dead at a very young age. So I just want to start off by thanking Skip Sandman. I always say and think about how difficult my childhood was, and all of the abuse that I witnessed every single day growing up. My mother was abused by my alcoholic stepfather nearly every single night. And we lived in a really crappy trailer. Sometimes we didn't have electricity. We were poor. We didn't have, you know, anything. I was just making a joke with my mom earlier because we have a lot, we're like in a blizzard here. So I was like, "Mom, I want to go outside and play." And then we were so poor when I was younger that we used to have to put bread bags over our shoes so that we could go outside and play in the snow, because we didn't have good snow boots or socks to keep our feet warm. But so I was making a joke, and I was telling her to hurry up and eat the bread so I can go outside and play. But so like some of those aspects of what, you know, is a difficult childhood, I try to bring it back and make so that it's not so heavy. Because I truly believe that when we have childhood trauma, that, you know, I've seen a quote that resonates with me so much, and it said that childhood trauma is a brain injury. Our brains developed in the context of terror. And when I read that, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I'm like, exactly you know, that there's like no better words than to explain childhood trauma than that, because it is 100% accurate. And I still have like things that I blocked out from my memory that sometimes will randomly come back. And I think a huge part of that trauma and blocking things out is so that you don't have to deal with them. And now that I speak out against things and I'm very open about my life, I have memories that come back to me that I did not think about or never, you know, talked about before. So every time that I talk, something, you know, something comes up within me, and it just continues me, or it allows me to continue to navigate through life in a way that I am actively healing myself while actively healing others, because I think that strength and power with each other and that common thing where we're like, hey, we've been through this, we've been through things, we need each other. That type of, you know, kinship and relationship and sisterhood and brotherhood, all of those relationships are extremely important to me. So I'm really grateful for all of that. So when I was younger and we had all the abuse that my mother had to go through, I really became a shut off teenager. I went to a Catholic school. My mom had me in Catholic school. And as soon as I got out of Catholic school, I really started rebelling. I hated being in Catholic school. As a Native person in a Catholic school, we were treated differently. My dad was actually a boarding school survivor. So those traumas and those experiences with racism and everything that has gone along with boarding schools and assimilation and everything, even though I didn't deal with the abuse to the extent that a lot of residential school survivors did, there were still times that I was abused in school. So it was really difficult for me to deal with so much violence at home and then go to school and had to be yelled at and treated like, you know, I was less than, and abused in ways that children should not have to deal with at school. And unfortunately, I had to go through that all through 6th grade. And now it's a really tough subject because my mom is Christian, my dad is Native American. And with the research that I'm doing now, it's really kind of a conflict between me and my mom. As she's at an older age where she is having a hard time trying to understand some of the things that I'm telling her. And it's even worse because she has a brain injury. So every time we have a conversation, sometimes she'll forget things. So it's kind of still a constant battle, even when in the age that I am now, I'm still battling with the balance of, you know, I have Christian family, Catholic family, and I'm traditional Native American, where I used to be Christian, but I don't practice that religion anymore. I don't hold hate or anything like that towards anybody who is, but it's just not something that I do because of the abuse that I faced when I went to Catholic school. Once I got out of Catholic school and I got into the normal middle schools, public schools, I started rebelling. I was, not a good student. I was not a good kid. Like, I look at my kid now compared to who I was at that age, and I'm just two completely different people, which is because I am setting a good example for my child, and she's not being raised around domestic violence, and she's, not growing up in context of terror anymore. And I say anymore because a huge part of my story and a huge part of what led me to being trafficked has to do with my child. But because she's at an age where she's old enough to start speaking about things herself, I took it upon myself to not talk about her story anymore, because that's her story. And although it is a piece of my story, it's not my experience to tell. And so that's one piece that I used to talk about, but now I don't, because of the age, and she's getting older. And when she's ready, if she wants to, speak about her traumas, she'll do that. But until then, that's a piece of my story that I kind of had to close the door on. So after that period of time where my daughter was going through things, I had really hit my lowest point, because my biological dad had died. I was done with my college or my AA degree. And my daughter went with her father for the summertime, or she was going to go with her father for the summertime. So I started talking with a man on Facebook, and I was really vulnerable and I was a really just broken woman, young woman at that time. And I did not have very many friends. I did not have, a really super big supportive family even. We all kind of suffered with our own grief when our dad died, and we didn't know what to do as a family to make us whole again. So we kind of all broke off in our own ways, or in our own different paths, and what was going on with everybody else. And that's another reason why I think that my family didn't even know what was happening to me when it was happening to me. But I was talking with a man on Facebook, and we were talking for like 6 months on Facebook, on the phone, FaceTime, all of that. And I was really under the impression that I was forming a relationship with this person, like I had talked to him every day, several times a day. And he would, tell me all these lies and things, and try to talk me into getting me to come out to Las Vegas. And, I would just make some excuses here and there, like I can't with my daughter. But then when my daughter decided that she wanted to go with her dad for the summer, that really made it possible for me to make the horrible decisions that I did. And I say that because even though I was groomed and I was lied to and deceived and all of that, I still made that decision to get on the bus, to get on the airplane. That was something that I did. And I started holding myself accountable for this, because that's how I decided that, or not decided, I figured out that I need to heal parts, you know, I still continually need to heal myself. So I need to continue to hold myself accountable as well. But so when I got out of Minnesota, I had immediately upon getting to Las Vegas, I very quickly came to know and realized that it wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't what he was promising. None of what he said was true, because immediately upon getting there, he pretty much laid down the line that this is what you're here for, and you have to do what I say. You have to listen to everything that I say. You cannot be, you know, disrespectful or disobedient, and if you do, you'll pay consequences for it. And he told me that on the first night that I was there. He also made me watch a video. It was literally a movie about how to be a good prostitute. And when I was watching that movie, I was just like taken back, because I didn't really like, I was like, is this really happening right now? Like, what is going on? And I think at that time is when my trauma response really began to kind of shut me down in a way, because I really didn't even understand what was happening. And I still did not understand what happened until years after, when I started doing research. But after like that first couple of nights and days, he would put me out. When I say put me out, he would send me off on a bus. There was one other girl there, that was like his partner, who was working with him to keep girls there. And she would try to calm people. She calmed me down a lot, is what she did. So that was her part in it, was to try to minimize impact or something. I don't know. But she was very helpful to me in many instances. Even while being abused, she was helpful. But at the same time, I think about that, you know, like that's why he had her there, because if he didn't have her there, then he probably wouldn't have been able to hang on to me like he did. When he started putting me out, he would give me $20 and then just tell me to go out on the strip. And because I was really disobedient and I did not want to do that, I did not want to listen, I didn't want to do any of the things that he was trying to get me to do, I would use the $20 and then I would just go through the casinos and get drunk, walk around, and I got myself into some really dangerous situations while doing that. And there was one time that I had drank so much I blacked out, and I woke up on the Bellagio hotel stairwell, and I had no idea where I was. I had no idea what happened. I knew myself because of my body, like that nothing had happened to my body. But I didn't know where I was. So I got out of the stairwell and figured out, you know, what casino I was in. And then when I pulled my phone out of my bag, I had like 100 missed calls. I had so many missed calls and I knew I was in trouble. So I was very scared, but I had to go back there. So when I went back, I knew it was not going to be good for me. I knew that I was going to be punished, and I was severely punished for that night and that incident, what happened. I was held in a room in Las Vegas heat in the middle of summer, so it's 115 degrees outside. Inside, no air conditioning, way hotter than that. So he kept me in a room for 5 days, took away all of my phone, everything that I had, and just beat me every day, all day. He smashed my head so many times into the wall that I literally could not open my mouth. And now that I look back on that, I think, that's when my voice was really silenced, because I could not literally open my mouth to speak. And I still have a scar on my lips, so I wear lipsticks and things like that to try to cover it up. But even though I, see it in the mirror every single day, it's something that I can never not think about for one day, because it's literally still written on my face. During that 5 days when I was being held in the room, I was repeatedly sexually assaulted, abused, and starved. My phone was taken away, so none of my family knew what was going on. And once I got my phone back after the 5 days were up, I got my phone back and I called my mom, my family. I called my mom and my family, and they didn't even notice that I was essentially missing, because I wasn't on any type of social media, which was unlike me. I went from posting, every day, oh, this is great. He would make me post things on Facebook to make it look like I was having a great time, to fool my family and friends into believing that, this is a great relationship and she's having a great time in Las Vegas. So they didn't notice those red flags of me not posting, which was normal, for me. So that's one of the things that I really emphasize for people, is that if you have somebody in your life who, may be going through a difficult time or is having some kind of problem or issues that you don't know about or that you may know about, if you notice them go off like social media or anything like that without saying anything about it, check in on them. If you have their phone numbers and things like that, make sure you're checking in on people who go off the grid, because I know now within my work that I do in legal advocacy, a lot of the people that I have helped bring back that are trafficked or that are missing, one of the first things is that their family is saying they're not active on social media. They haven't posted in 3 weeks. They, haven't called. So then they'll call me for help, and I do what I can to help them. When I was talking a little bit earlier about how my trauma kind of blocks things out and some things will come back to me, I was just talking with my daughter the other day, because there's a new pizza shop, new ownership for a pizza shop in our city, and one of the owners is somebody who used to be one of my good friends. He was a friend or relative of one of my ex-boyfriends, but when I seen him and then we left, things had started coming back to me, because I remember, I knew that boyfriend was an abusive person, and I knew that was an abusive relationship, but I had a whole completely huge memory come back of being abused in the car and having, you know, his cousin in the front seat trying to help me. And that was something that I had completely forgotten about until I seen him. Like, this is 10 years later, about 8 years later. So I didn't have that, you know, memory recall until I had seen something familiar, or, you know, seen someone familiar. So I keep having not keep, like, it happens from time to time where, like, I'll see somebody, I will hear some song, or I will see something at the casino, things like that, that triggers different memories that I had kept locked up. And I had one of those happen to me again recently within the last few months. And it was, I don't remember what it was at the casino that made me think about that, but I was down in Morton, Minnesota, and I was doing a presentation like this, but it was in person. So they brought me out to their casino and had an event at the casino. And so after the event, I went down to the casino and I was playing around in the slots. And I was just thinking about, you know, how I was trafficked through casinos, and now I'm still in a casino, but I'm talking about my trafficking. And it was like, for me, it was like kind of almost a bittersweet feeling, because I'm in such a better place now. And I know that I'm safe, and I know that I'm respected, and that people are taking care of me. And I had a flashback when I was down there that something happened to me when I was in Las Vegas. And it was one of the times where I was out just kind of wandering on the strip through different casinos. I would just walk through casinos aimlessly, just to try to waste time. But one of the casinos I was walking through, I had a guy approach me, and I mean, to me, he looked cool. Like, he looked cute. Like, and that was another thing that got me in trouble, was I got caught a couple of times talking to people that I shouldn't have been talking to. But that's just because I was drinking, and I was, you know, under the influence of alcohol, which made me a more talkative person, made me, you know, more outgoing, wanting to talk to people. But this memory that I just unlocked not long ago when I was in Morton, this man asked me if I wanted to go smoke a joint, and I said yeah. So we went walking through this casino and through, like, upstairs to this little balcony space. And I just remember looking out and seeing, you know, Las Vegas and the strip, and like being high up and feeling anxious about it. And he's like, "Oh, I'll be right back. I'm just gonna run to my room." And I was like, okay. So I stood there for about 30 seconds, and then I immediately just felt bad about it. There was something that kicked into my instincts that said, "You need to get out of here now." So I ran. I didn't even say goodbye to that guy. Like, I didn't know what was gonna happen to me. But I ran, I got in the elevator, flew down, you know, went down, and then ran as quickly as I could out of the casino into another one. And I'm just thinking about that now, once I started to remember that and remember what was going on through my mind at that time, and how bad of a situation that could have been had I not ran. Like, it could have gone so many different ways. He could have been a murderer, or he could have been an undercover police officer who was trying to, you know, do a sting and put me into jail. There's so many different aspects of Las Vegas and the human trafficking that goes on in Las Vegas, that a lot of people don't understand unless they're hearing it from somebody who's actually been there and gone through it. And there is a lot of a lot of trafficking that happens in Vegas. So it's triggering to me sometimes, you know, when people say like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Those types of sayings that can completely be harmless to like tourists or, you know, people like who are just traveling there for fun. But somebody like me who went there and had their life and spirits completely broken down to nothing, those words and phrases, they are triggering. So I have to find ways to, you know, bounce back from those types of things, because I know and understand that a lot of people really like that city. A lot of people really enjoy going there. But for me, that city is the ugliest city that I have ever seen. When I started to really want to get out of there, I started just not listening a lot more. I never listened. He, you know, would continually punish me, continually starve me, not allow me to use my phone, those types of things. And I just, at a point, my spirits were so broken down by this man and what he was doing to me. I didn't want to live anymore. So I told him, I was like, you're going to have to let me go home. Otherwise, you're just going to have to kill me. And when I said that to him, he got really mad and beat me. But then within the next couple of days, I kept saying, like, I just want to go home. I want to go home. I'm not going to listen to you. I was being very, very disobedient and not wanting to listen to him at all. So he let me call my mom, who got me a plane ticket. I just told her, I need to come home. Please help me get home. So she did. She bought me a plane ticket, and then he, you know, made me pack up all my stuff and just dropped me off at the airport. So I didn't have any money. I didn't have anything but the clothes in my bag and my phone. And even that, I didn't have a charger for it, so my phone died. So for about 4 hours before I needed to be able to get a hold of my mom, because when I got there, even though my plane ticket was paid for, my luggage wasn't. And even though it was just some little thing, you know, clothings and things, makeup and whatnot, like I didn't want to leave my luggage behind. So I sat in the airport for 4 hours crying, and not one single person stopped to ask me if I was okay. Not one single person who even worked there asked me if I was okay. And that's another aspect of awareness that I talk about, is keeping, you know, being aware of what's going on around you and seeing if somebody's in danger. It's those types of signs that you can help somebody, because if somebody would have just asked if I was okay, it would have made my trip home so much easier, because I would have been able to just use somebody's phone. I ended up having to call my mom on a collect call, which she didn't answer at first because it was late at night. And then when she did answer, I was so much in a state of, I think, shock and trauma, and just there was so much going on, and I felt like I was drowning, that I didn't even know what to do. My mom was like, what do you need? I just bought you a ticket. Are you on your way home? And I told her that I somebody to pay for my baggage. So she gave me her credit card number and I got my baggage paid for. But just that part of it was really traumatizing because of that aspect of nobody stopped to see what was wrong. And I can't imagine, like I'm such an empathetic person. So like if I see somebody crying, and they look like they need help, I stop and I ask if they need help. And I think that needs to be something that should be normalized. And if they don't need help, they'll just say no. But if they do, you could really help change somebody's life or save somebody from a dangerous situation. So definitely if you see something, say something. Yeah, that just popped up in the chat. That's what I was gonna say. So once I got home, I didn't tell my family what was going on. I didn't tell them what happened to me. Nobody really asked because our family was still really broken. We weren't close. We were not a close family. So we didn't talk about each other's pain because we all know that we all had our own grief and we were drowning in grief from losing my dad, and it just shut everybody off from each other. So my mother and my sisters did not know that the things that I went through until I started speaking about it publicly. Like they did not know half of the things. My sisters knew a couple of little things I had told them because obviously the scar on my lip when you're in person with me and I don't have lipstick on, it's very visible to see. But once I started speaking out started speaking out and telling my story, that's when things really started to change for me. I went back to school. I started doing research. I pulled myself literally out of a ditch. And I say that literally out of a ditch because there was a time before I went back to school and I was living in Superior, Wisconsin at the time. And I was so depressed. I was so just broken because my best friend had just committed suicide. And I didn't know, there's so many aspects of my life and trauma and things that I have gone through that are directly related to grief. And it's just because I never knew how to handle it. And I never knew how to deal with loss like that. And when my best friend committed suicide, I really down spiraled again because I was doing okay for a while. But then I down spiraled again. And I went to the store, I got some alcohol, and then I went to an area underneath the bridge and sat there where I knew it was water and it was not a safe area for me to be. I went there to die. I did. And I think there's also so much stigma around mental health and being able to talk about things so that they do not take over your spirits in your life like that. Because I was so much into not dealing with my problems that the only way I knew how to deal with them was to grab a bottle and try to drown myself. Luckily, when I was in that ditch and underneath the bridge, I ended up calling my mom. I called my mom and it was a pretty basic goodbye call. one of my very good friends called me, and I don't remember the conversation that much because I was inebriated. I had drank nearly a whole bottle of vodka to myself. But they all started working to try to figure out where I was at. And once they figured out where I was at, they had to call the police. The police ended up finding me. When the police got to me, I was on the train tracks. And I was passed out on the train tracks. So if I had not called my mother to say goodbye, I probably would have been killed on the train tracks. And I don't speak about this story often, and I haven't spoken about it to this many people at all. But the reason why I'm speaking about it today is because there's so much going on in the world, and we don't ever know what somebody is going through. And we have to be there for each other. I don't know if anybody knows who Twitch is, but he's an incredible dancer. Social media, he was on the Ellen Show for very many years, but he committed suicide the other day. And yesterday it was all over the news, all over TikTok, all over Facebook. So when things like that happen, it brings me back to that time when I was feeling that hopeless, where I did not want to live anymore, because I understand that pain. I understand not wanting to be here anymore. But I also think at the same time that it is important to talk about these things, because people do need to know that it is not good to keep those things locked up within inside you, because it will destroy you. And it has tried to destroy me so many times. I should have been dead so many times because of the situations that I put myself into, or the situations that I got into because of my alcoholism, and because of not knowing how to deal with trauma and not knowing how to heal trauma. I saved myself by going back to school. And that is where things completely started to change for me. And had I not decided to go back to school, I don't think I would be alive, honestly. I remember when I decided to go back to school, I was working, I was waitressing. So I was working at a Perkins that, we were about a mile and a half away from where I was living. So I had to walk to work. Some nights I had to walk, sometimes I would take a cab. But I remember one night I got done with like an 11-hour long shift, and I was completely just wore out. My feet hurt, but I still had to walk home. And I was walking home, and I took a shortcut through a part of the UWS parking lot, and I just kind of stopped there for a minute. And because I had already had my 2-year degree, I thought I stopped there, and I was like thinking to myself, and I was kind of just taking a break and thinking about life. And I envisioned myself there in the school. So once I got home, I started looking into programs, and I seen that they had a legal studies program. So that was perfect, because all of my credits from my first degree would transfer over to that degree, so that I could finish my legal studies degree in 2 years. So I did that. I applied, and I was very open about things with all of my you know, instructors and the people who worked with me at the school. Because of the research that I was doing, I did my first kind of independent study was never published. It was kind of more just a huge literature review. But that's when I started to come to realize that I was trafficked. You know, I've been sexually assaulted so many times. I've, you know, been in abusive relationships and survived domestic violence and stalking. I grew up with childhood trauma. All of these things that were directly correlated with missing and murdered Indigenous people had happened to me. So I knew that I had to be able to find it within myself to speak out against these things, and to be able to bring that personal aspect of it into the work, because I knew it was needed and is needed in my community, but it was very much needed for my own healing. Duluth, Minnesota held a Trafficking Awareness Month in January. So they held a opening thing, and because I was doing research at that time for it, and I was just coming to terms that I was a survivor of human trafficking, I went to the event, and at the time, there was our senator who represents my area, Pete Stauber, was up there talking about how he cares so much about Native women. He cares about human trafficking. You know, he was up there spewing all these lies, because I knew that they were lies, because he was not supporting the legal acts and laws that we were trying to get passed at the time. So I wasn't scheduled to speak at this event. I was just there in the back, sitting there, but something, you know, inside of me was like, get up, you need to say something. It was like a kind of a deep little rage, because this man's up here lying to all of these people's faces, knowing that he does not care about Native people, he just wants their vote. So I went up there on the stage and I grabbed the microphone, and I started telling parts of my survivor story. And there was like 100+ people and all the press in the room. So after I started saying, you know, after I had, that was me publicly coming out as a survivor of trafficking, and it was completely unplanned. It was my spirits just telling me that your voice is needed here. Get up and say something. So I did. And then after I spoke, I turned around and looked at Pete and I said, "Are you going to start supporting MIWSAC now?" And he was kind of frozen in his space, you know, in his seat, because I don't think he was, first, obviously not expecting to be called out on stage like that, but he didn't know how to reply. But yeah, he shook his head and said, yeah. And then a couple of weeks after that, he came to another event. It was like a MMIW march on it was on Valentine's Day, but he was at another event. So I knew he was going to be there because they had him on the agenda again, which was frustrating to me. I'm like, no. So I printed off a bunch of statistics from different research, because I knew that he was highly supportive of the pipeline that was trying to rip through Minnesota, the Line 3 pipeline. And I knew that that pipeline and its workers were going to bring violence to our people. And so I gave them statistics of Standing Rock and the Bakken oil fields and all of these other extractive industries and pipelines that prior research had already found that there were, you know, direct correlations with missing, murdered Indigenous people, trafficking, violence, and those pipelines, extractive industries. So I gave him that information. I printed it off, handed it to him, and I was like, here, don't say you're going to care about Native people, but then continue to say that this is the safest pipeline in America. So every time I see him, we like butt heads. He doesn't like me. It's fine because I don't like him either. After I gave him that information, it must have been like maybe a month later, but he sent me an official letter through the mail, the US mail, not an email, not anything like that. It was, you know, his official letter with his stamp on it, his signature, all of that. And it was just like, it started off with my name and telling me that, again, he cares about Native women and trafficking. But within that letter was literally the exact statistics that I had printed off for him. So he literally gave me back the information and the exact same statistics that I gave to him, and he gave them back to me. When that happened, I'm just like, okay, some things need to happen. I need to get a little bit louder here. So that's really when I started speaking more publicly, more, you know, nationally and within different organizations, and doing, you know, everything that I'm doing now, that I have been doing for the past 3 years. It's really because of him and his lies, and because I've seen so many characteristics of what he was, you know, lying to me about, or lying to us as people he represents as a whole, to the same lies and grooming tactics that I was forced to be under when I was being trafficked. So that's where I found a large part of my passion and my ability to be able to speak about it, because of how frustrated I was by this government official who was literally feeding me back my own words. And I still, you know, still to this day do not like to be in spaces with him. There's different structures and things now. Like, I don't think they send him an invite anymore, but sometimes he'll still just show up. But so that's some of the beginning stages of like what brought me into the work that I'm doing now. And I think, you know, one time is it? Oh, I've been talking for an hour already. See, I told you I can probably talk for 2 or 3 hours. Now that once I started doing my research and doing different trainings, I took, you know, my research and I immediately started implementing it. My first research project was, you know, something that really went into various different organizations and gave them that survivor view lens, which was much needed. And I was a legal studies student training the Judicial Council of California at one point. So I had really risen up to my potential and purpose very quickly after I decided that, hey, I'm going to start speaking out. I'm going to start living my truth. I'm going to start walking in my purpose. And it just all continued to go up from there. I did excellent in school. I graduated as the Chancellor's Leadership Awardee and the student speaker, which was something for me that was one of my proudest moments in my life, was being able to stand on that stage and be, you know, amongst all of the deans and people of the school. And then there's me, you know, this Native trauma trafficking survivor who was once, not very long ago, a very, very broken woman and girl. And I think back to those times, you know, when I was feeling broken and when I was not, and I was struggling to stay alive. And I look at myself now and how much my life has changed, and how much my life has changed, not only for myself, but for my family as well. It's brought my family back together. My family is closer, you know, me and my sisters are closer. Me and my mom have a great relationship. Me and my daughter, and my daughter is incredible. You know, she went from having a difficult time from things that she had gone through, when it was being reflected in her schoolwork. And last year I moved her to a different school where, you know, they had culture, things that she had access to. And now she's a straight A student with 4.0 GPA. She's 15 years old and will have her CNA license next month. So all of the great things that I have done and the academic success that I have had is directly already reflected within my daughter. So that is something that keeps me going, you know, because I think about it and, you know, like I went through pain and trauma, and she went through pain and trauma. I rose up and decided it needs to stop. Now she's rising up. And I don't think there's anything that's much more beautiful than that in my life, is the ability to be able to be a good mom and to be a good role model, and to have my child, you know, want to be like me and strive to be, you know, like me. And it's what keeps me going every single day. You know, I still have bad days. Everybody's still going to have bad days. But there are so many good things in my life now that I never had before. And it is truly what keeps me going and what keeps me want to keep succeeding and changing and growing, because it's a journey. Healing is a journey. You know, I say that all the time, like you can't be completely healed. There's always going to be days where, you know, you're going to feel down and out, but those are the days where it's important to reach out for help. And there's so much help out there, and especially in Native communities, we have now so much support systems that necessarily weren't there before, you know. And I had said that so many times, like when I think about it, like I absolutely became the person who I needed when I was younger. And so for me, being able to be that person for people who are going through things that have maybe I've gone through, you know, I advocated for people that have gone through the same things that I have. So I truly find strength in that, me becoming the person I needed before, because I never had anybody that I could trust, that I knew would be there for me, or that would understand me. So that I became that person. And I live by that every single day. I wake up, you know, I don't take days off. And people get mad, like, oh, you have to do self-care. You have to care about, you know, you have to work on self-care. And I do, but there's so much that people don't realize, that my work and my research and the work and advocacy and the things that I do are self-care for me. Because if I wasn't doing these things, then that, you know, I would be in a potentially dangerous spot emotionally, or, you know, I would not be able to continue to grow and to be able to continue to heal and do well if I stop doing what I'm doing, you know. So it's a constant constant thing for me is to be able to find that balance between work and family. But I have an incredible support system. I have an incredible network of people who I work with and people who are my friends and sisters. And I genuinely love the life that I live today because of me finding the ability to overcome all of the things that happened to me and turn it around and turn it into something good. There's one more thing that I just want to kind of close off with on my end. And then people have questions, that's fine. But when I first I want to say it was like the first semester of when I went back to school at UMD. I'm at UMD now, UWS. I had watched this. They came for Indigenous Peoples Day, and the guy was telling a story about the eagle feather, and this eagle feather is what I call my emotional support feather. Not only because I use it to smudge, but the story that the guy was telling was, he said to look at this feather and think about it like your life. And starting out a break for childhood trauma. Here's alcoholism and addiction, sexual assault, domestic violence, suicide, death of a loved one, broken nail, little things like that. He told us to apply these things to our everyday life. So all of these rips, all of these breaks, all it takes to get them back together is just to care for it and caress it a couple of times. Give it a little bit of love. And then it's not broken anymore. So sometimes when I'm having a bad day, or if something, something triggers me from, my abuse or things that I've gone through, I break my feather. I break it and I'll just leave it on my nightstand or my dresser, and I'll leave it broken for the day until I come to the point in the point of my day or night when I want to sit with those feelings and feel those feelings and decide to put it back together again. And it always goes back. That's the beautiful thing about eagle feathers, is that it always goes back. So I feel that that is something that is significant for us as Indigenous people and as Indigenous survivors of violence, that no matter how many times you've been broken, or no matter how many times you've come apart, you can always put yourself back together. So, Shimigwich. Thank you.
Jessica, oh my goodness gracious. So the chat is like, it's got to be like 800 comments. Wopila, Washte, good. Thank you so much. And I was just typing in the chat, which I won't hit the clicky things. But I was like, yeah, horsehair has memory, right? Feathers have memory. Our bodies have memory, right? We can twist and turn we can heal and clip and all the things, and all the things have memory. So do our blood memory is memory, right? Whether it's good, bad, or the other. I think everyone in this space is just amazed by your story and your resilience. So like, Jessica's one of my favorites. So everyone else, Jessica, I'm talking about you, around you, right? But like, she's coming to our sex trafficking conference, and I wouldn't have done this conference at all unless Jessica was going to be with us, because the story of resilience and strength, which is inspirational to the rest of us in our daily lives. You have survived, and they tried us, because I'm a survivor too in a different way. They tried us, and we're still here, man. So sometimes it just breaks down to that. And Jessica's such a gentle, sweet voice for that experience. And I'm just in so much gratitude, Jessica. Thank you so much.